this is the radical intimacy sort of matrix. And you can see that the way that the way that I think about deep connection is through this bingo card, if you will, of 9 areas of opportunity for connection. So there are 3 kinds of intimacy: emotional, physical, and energetic. And then there are 3 levels of intimacy: self, other, and world. And so you end up with these 9 areas that you can focus on and cultivate individually. Now, some of them are going to be more challenging. Is that good
Yeah,
enough for
so
now?
yeah,
Uh,
because so you're saying that there's your matrix is divided into 9 separate areas, and some of the areas are going to be more challenging than others. And we're diving into emotional intimacy and energetic energy. So
yes.
you talk really beautifully in your book about the connection between personal energy and intimacy. Can you explain how individual energy affects emotions and the dynamics between partners?
Yeah, that's a big question. Let me ask you for a little clarity on an individual level. Are you I was actually uh ready to dive into sort of the physical aspects. You had talked about sexual
Dive.
self-care, which is fine. I'm happy to talk about anything that would be most nourishing for this group of people, but I want to understand your question. So, um emotional or energetic intimacy with ourselves,
Yes.
how does that, yeah,
So,
so uh
so I
go on.
noticed that to really understand our intimate connection with self, we have to five sensorize it. We have to feel it, see it, smell it, taste it, invite it. The way you describe personal intimacy is a phenomenal, first of all. And I think this is what I really want my group to get out of this piece of the program is that self-care isn't outside in. It's not an outside in, it's an inside out, and that's sexual self care also. It's got to be an emotional connection. And first of all, you you put I quoted you in our program around we can only expect our partner, other people, to come up to join us as far as we can come up for ourselves. So I didn't mean to be confusing. I'm sorry. I'm just hoping maybe you can unpack
Okay.
that a little bit. And yes, definitely talk
Yeah,
about sexuality, of course.
yeah, yeah. Yes, I say it often. Exactly. My words are slightly different. It's exactly the same thing as you're saying, which is we can meet each other only to the extent that we can meet ourselves. So if we are going to share something with someone, um we better know what it is that we're sharing. You know, the deeper and the more that we know ourselves, the more that we can then let other people in. And when we are feeling unmet by our partner, generally it's because they haven't met themselves. Generally, it's because they haven't slowed down and been able to look at themselves enough to understand what's happening with you. There are there are exercises, all kinds of exercises that we can do with our partners to invite in that sort of level of connection and seeing each other. And we can talk about those a little bit more at the end. But the first piece of all of this, and really the whole premise of the radical intimacy model, is that our intimacy with ourselves is is primary. It's the foundation for our ability to connect with each other. And so we sort of, in this culture, we misunderstand and mischaracterize intimacy as something that is dependent on somebody else and the participation of somebody else. And the fact is that intimacy is available to us, just as who we are, um, individually. And that is our connection with ourselves, really, really looking underneath our thoughts to what's happening in our nervous system, what's happening in our emotional life, and and also intimacy with the world in general. Like I will often say, like, let the world penetrate you through your senses. So Laura, when you say like it's something that we need to see, feel, hear, touch, that is that is really the basis of intimacy, is what's happening with underneath the thoughts, underneath the feelings, what is happening in our nervous system? What is stimulating us? What are we allowing to touch us? Um, and the more that we are willing to broaden our bandwidth uh for life force energy, the more we are available to connect with other people. Um, and you can imagine how that affects the way we experience sex, right? We tend to think of sex as something that we do, an activity that we do. Actually, sex at its best, the opportunity for sex is really to it's who we are. It's a form of self-expression. It's a an altering of consciousness. In tantra, we say that when we make love, it's the universe making love to itself through us. It's a form of prayer. It's a form of opening up to um the energy of the universe, and an expression of each of us individually, for solo sex, and in the context of partnered sex, to have that merging with the oneness. It's not just about the logistics of, first I do this to you and then you do this to me, and our bodies align this way and we move around a lot and it feels really good. um that's the human level, but
That's the clinical approach.
spiritual, for like, yeah. But there's also this opportunity for sex to be a beautiful expression um of a more sort of energetic connection. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what you're saying, it's sex in and of itself is a cohesive connection to sort. We're really connecting emotionally, intimately, and it's a sacred moment in so many
Hmm.
ways. It's an energetic moment, an expression of our human beingness, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And so how about our intimate connection with self first, since we're coming from the self, and the self is typically the seed that leads to the next piece. Um, what are some things that we can do to really reconnect with the intimate self in this moment?
Yeah, I think the first thing that is really crucial, and a lot of the work that I do with women in this area, first and foremost, when we talk about sexual self-care, we actually have to define sexual self. We have to experience and start to see that each of us is a sexual being, and that's not always easy in this culture. We are, as women, we are told how we should look, how we should behave, how we should think, how we should feel. We're, told that we need to not have too much of our own desire because that is, slutty or immoral or dirty. And then we're also told that we need to be sexy for the consumption of our partners or men in general. Half the world needs to see us as desirable. And so there's an inherent depersonalization that happens just in the systems that we are raised in. And so it doesn't, and when I say like we are all sexual beings and we are all, we each have a sexual identity, I have no investment in what that looks like for you or for anybody. It could look like a million different things as long as it's authentic and organic.
Mhm.
um that's all that matters. Like you can have belief systems, you can have values that are different from each other. But what I find is that we are fed endless, and men are too. It
Mhm.
just isn't my work. So I focus on what women have been told,
Or mine.
and the message and the messages that we receive are we internalize as some sort of truths without even knowing it. It's just the nature of being human and individual in a system that is giving us input and opinions about who we are and what we should be and feel and do or not do. So one of the things that and I don't know if you have a pen, I know this is being recorded so you can come back to it, but there are 6 areas of inquiry, 6 areas of major influence on how we think about sex and think about ourselves as sexual beings. The first is your family of origin, whoever raised you. I say it that way because not everybody was raised by their parents. Um, but we immediately, as soon as we come out of the womb, we are categorized as boy or girl. And that is loaded up with all kinds of like how we're going to dress, how we're going to behave, things. And some of that is organic, some of it is imposed on us. Um, it's not right or wrong. It just is.
Mhm.
And so we also grow up in an environment where there's a lot of information for us. We watch our parents, we see how they interact with each other, how is affection treated in the home, how is sexuality discussed. Some of us grew up with parents who kissed and hugged and flirted with each other. And some of us grew up in homes where our parents were really stoic and really not very connected in that way. That affects the way we look at partnership and sexuality. um what what words were used. Is it did your I grew up with school teachers. We talked about vaginas and vulvas and penises and scrotums, and like that was just terminology, like we would talk about a liver or a nasal passage, or it was. But for many people those words are not used, no words are used.
Oh my God, my mom
um
used the weirdest words
and
to explain what my vagina was. I was like, what?
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So,
It's fascinating. I ran a poll one time about what your parents called what your mother called your vagina, and it was hilarious. I mean, we were just roaring about all the craziness of the euphemisms around our body parts. Um, so there's family of origin. There's a lot to dig into there. Um, Society, if you are born a white girl in Montana, it's
mhm.
different than you have a different sort of view, a different context of sexuality than if you are a black boy in Kenya. Like it's just there's a different context, and so the container and the messages that we get from the particular section of society in which we're born into, that affects us. um The the third is religion, a deep, deep topic for a lot of people. And I work with a lot of people in unwinding religious trauma around their sexuality, particularly for women, but also for men. And it doesn't matter what, it's just a very influential. My point is that there's a high level of influence that tends to happen in a religious context. So there's that. Um, Also, no surprise, the advertising industry, right? You smell funny, you need all these products, you need to, women need to shave. There's like, I mean, we watch all the time, all kinds of messages coming through advertising and marketing. Um, so there's that entertainment industry, all the rom-coms, the fairy tales, the Prince Charmings, the all of it, you know. And finally pornography, which is in this country our de facto sex education.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of crazy misinformation that is I want to say it's the basis of a ton of my work is teaching women what their bodies actually do, not what pornography has told them they should do,
And that's a
right?
game
It
changer.
takes
That chapter in your book, I want you guys to know
yeah.
that Zoe's platform on pornography is a game changer. It's huge. Thank you. I want to thank
Uh
you for that.
yeah, thank you. I'm certainly not the first. I stand on the shoulders of some great pioneers in that arena, but yes, I mean, for instance, I just something that like you may or may not know. Physiologically, it takes a woman's body 30 to 4 30 to 40 minutes of sexual activity to be ready for penetration. It's not to say that you can't be penetrated and even have an orgasm inside of that 30 minutes,
Mhm.
but there's a lot that happens in your body that that primes your body to be penetrated. And when we're young, in particular, and things are exciting, our bodies can take up the slack for us rushing that process. As we get older, not so much. We don't lubricate as quickly, we don't circulate as quickly. We have nerve endings that in drop in estrogen, our nerve endings start to get almost calloused. And so there isn't as much sensation. And there's just a lot. Our ligaments in our pelvic area relax to accept penetration. The cervix draws upwards. All of those things don't exist in pornography. Like, there's a cultural expectation because we have no scientific education around this or pleasure-based sex ed. um there's this like sort of cultural myth that that women see a hard penis and immediately lubricate and are this close to orgasm. Like, how helpful is that for us? And how helpful is that for men who are really completely in the dark about what it takes to create a satisfying and connective and pleasurable sexual experience, right? Also, by the way, 80% of women need direct clitoral stimulation to have an orgasm. I have so many women coming to me saying, I can't have never had a vaginal orgasm and what's wrong with me? Can you teach me how to do that? It's like, no, there's nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing
You're
wrong with
like
this.
80% of the women. At the other 20, because it's self-reporting, I'm not so sure that that's even accurate. And what I believe happens is women who have vaginal orgasms are really stimulating the
Mhm.
internal structure of the clitoris, which is in the anterior wall. Also, also what was considered the G spot is actually the internal structure of the clitoris. It's like an iceberg. That little thing on the outside is really the tip of an iceberg. It it is a highly innervated organ whose only purpose is pleasure. So there's 30,000 nerve endings in the clitoris. In a whole penis, there are 3,000. So there's a lot that you could know about your body, and you guys may know this. I don't mean to make an assumption that you don't know any of this, but there's a lot of scientific information that we are not that we are not given, and that men are not given. So yeah, so there's pornography, and there's tons to dig into there in terms of the influence on how we think about ourselves. Um, in terms of sexual self-care, one of the things that I like to say is that there's like a double helix of things to look at in this work. One is the way we think about sex, which are these 6 areas that I talked to you about. The other is how we feel when we have sex. So that's the mind and the body. And the mind body connection during sex is your most powerful, as with anything, really. It's the most powerful way to look at how to find a certain level of connection to yourself in that context, and establish what I think of as a sexual identity or a sexual self. And um and then how to sort of nurture both of those pieces and communicate with your partners about that. So that all makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I really like the analogy of this double helix. And I think that this is a really good moment to open the floor up to anybody that has any questions for Zoe. Anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute because I'm going to fire a bunch off. I got a bunch. Holly, anybody? Okay, so
So
how,
I do. I
go ahead.
Wait, Holly's got a
so I was going to ask. Now I forgot. So after being married for 33 years, how would one go about getting new ideas to spice up the sex life to help, um, get the fire burning again? Because 33 years you get stuck in a rut, even though I've tried everything. What advice would you give on doing something like that, or trying new things?
Yeah, so there is this data that shows that the couples who have been together in a long-term monogamous relationship, the couples that report being most satisfied in their um, sexual relationship are the ones that also talk about it. So what I like to first suggest is that you talk about, like, not in the bedroom, like go out to dinner, go on a date night, and talk about, like, what are some of your best memories of us having sex? Like, remember that time I gave you a blowjob on the roof of the parking lot, or you know or like, all
Yeah,
of
I've
those.
got some of those stories.
Yeah, like, remember when we went to, Yosemite, and we were alone in the, like, bring up some of the highlights, play the highlight reel for each
Okay.
other. Or what are your fantasies? Like, what are some of your fantasies? And not that you need to play out those fantasies, but fantasy and imagination is one of the most powerful tools of eroticism, right?
Mhm.
Also, I find that couples really respond to, along with all that sort of heightened eros, couples tend to feel more um, sexual towards each other and desire each other when there's a lot of gratitude in the space. I am so grateful You know, I'm so grateful for you. And here are the ways that I am grateful. I'm grateful for you that you're such a great father. I'm grateful that you have provided such a wonderful lifestyle. I'm grateful that you held down the fort when I had to have that surgery. Um, I'm grateful I get to wake up with you every day. And invite that, you know, like I are you married to a man?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so men in particular, most of them, not all of them, but most of them need a little bit of a structure and some instructions on how we're going to do this. If you tell them to just, you know, we're going to express our gratitude for each other. Oh my God, we're going to talk about feelings. They need they need the rules of the game. So you know, you trade. Like I'm gonna say something and then you're gonna say something. Um and don't get frustrated. They're out of their comfort zone. Most men are out of their comfort zone. So you've got to be like patient and guide them in this heart connecting experience.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the best part is how you feel when you're guiding them. Because when you're in that perfect flow of giving and receiving, and they feel safe, you know, safety really is important, I think, too. And that's just really is a really good feeling. That's great. Anybody else have questions for Zoe? Amy Sue.
I have a question. So we've been married 18 plus years, together 20 plus. We are intimate in all these other ways, except for sexually. We also sleep in different bedrooms because of his snoring and our schedule, but we're very intimate in other ways. But we both just turned 55 this year. So I keep kind of asking him if he could see maybe a urologist. I finally got him to see his regular doctor to get B12 injections to help with his energy because he's so tired all the time. He falls asleep a lot sooner than I am. I'm a night owl. He's an early riser. And then, you know, you talk about as you grow older, you know, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, all those levels are different. I've been working on my stuff, but I think I would like him to see if his levels are definitely lower because they seem to be, but I'm not a doctor, so
Has he had his testosterone checked?
no.
I would put a lot of money on a bet that it's low. Um, it's I mean, it's almost universal when men hit their 50s, and there's a new report out that men could supplement testosterone earlier than 50s. It's currently, I think 55 is the age that most men will need supplements. Um, I beyond that, I don't know if this is helpful, but I'm gonna sort of like lay it out. Um, what I strongly believe in and advocate for is that we extract this idea of what sex is, that we need to, you know, we need to like be passionate and it needs to be spontaneous where we can, and that's the way it should be, and that there's something wrong with us if we're not, you know, like we've lost the desire, the spontaneous desire for each other. Um, Making sex something that you do, that you set up, that you plan, that you know, you don't eat the spicy onion burrito beforehand. You plan it for a time that is that we're both probably gonna have the most energy, you know, at the same time. I'm a night owl, my husband's not a night owl, right? And we have to manage that.
Mhm.
You really you set the scene, you know. I love that you don't sleep. I don't love that you don't sleep together for snoring purposes, but it does provide an opportunity to invite each other into each other's spaces,
Yeah.
and to really like just sort of jump into the frame of mind that like this is our time. You can take the I don't know if he has, you know, unreliable erections at this point, but you can take the pressure off of intercourse and erection and just make it about pleasure, you know, and I work with a bunch of people who have erectile dysfunction or are paraplegic or really like the penetration is off the table, penetration with a penis. There are other ways, you know, there are other things. And really, when it becomes about pleasure, it takes the pressure off of performance and it becomes much more about connection and experience. So yes, hormones, yes, getting all of that, you know, sort of checked into and optimized. I love that you have intimacy and that you're connected and loving and healthy. And there's an aspect of keeping your erotic selves sort of nurtured and on board and creating the context and the circumstances where that can start to take shape again.
Yeah, and I love the idea of being able to talk about, like, on a date night, of past memories and things like that. So I'm definitely going to use that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, part of it is that as women and men who are aging, we need to just recognize that like sex is still for us, you know? We deserve to have pleasure. We deserve to be sexy. We deserve to swing from the chandelier if that's what we're into, you know? I love erotica. I don't love porn, mainstream porn. I do love erotica. I do love stories and reading to each other and listening. There are a bunch of audio apps, you know, for like audio erotica where you can Google and find your thing, you know, and or read. There are great books, and there's a store in Los Angeles. I think they have an online store called The Ripped Bodice. It's erotica. It's female based erotica, you know. Um, all of that is fun and exciting and stimulating and gets us out of ourselves a little bit.
I think that's a fabulous idea. So I started in that arena with Anis, is it Anis Nin or is it Nayasin?
Nice.
Yeah, Little
Yeah.
Birds, her Little Bird series. And I think she wrote that in like the
Yeah.
1920s, early 30s, but this is a great erotic
Yes.
series. And so and Zoe, I would love those recommendations from you to share with the group, where they can find heterosexual friendly erotica for women, you know, the audios. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, there's the app is called Dipsea, Dipsea, Dipsea. And you'll have to, you know, search for your thing. There's going to be a lot of stuff on there that is not for you. And there's, or you know, for anybody, it's just very diverse, so you have to sort of find what it is that you're wanting. I also encourage couples to write their own erotica and to share that with, you
That's
know,
great.
it's
That
almost
cracks me up. You
yeah,
guys should hear, you
yeah.
got to get
I
her
try
book.
not.
You've got to get this on audio, guys, because the way, oh my God, she drops these nuggets of talking about sex with a partner. I mean, this is just in the first 2 chapters. This like from chapter 1 to 4. Every time you talk about, you describe this, I'm like, oh my God, right? I mean, it's beautiful, beautiful. She describes
Oh,
sex in just the most incredible way. I love that. Thank you. Very talented. I appreciate you. So
thank you.
yeah, anybody else have a question? Jolene, Kendra?
I don't have a question, but I was just gonna say, I don't no one in this room knows me really yet except Laura, but the 28 years that I was with my late husband, he had a spinal cord injury.
Wow.
And we had really hot sex for like the first 6 months we were together, and then he broke his neck.
Oh,
And then I stayed and married him anyway, and there was no sex life for 28 years. Hardly.
yeah.
Um, but he knew, I think, that he had to keep me happy. So we got super creative in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I had to get past the way I was raised of the Christian, shameful, God forbid you do any of this or touch yourself or have a feeling that's anything, beyond, what your physical, you know what I mean? Like I'm not supposed to think nasty, and you're not supposed to do that stuff. And it's very shameful and all of that. So it was hard to get to the point of being open to other things.
Yeah.
But once my mind was open to that kind of stuff, we got creative with lots of different things in lots of different ways. And I was happy enough to remain married.
Yeah.
And I loved him with all my heart. And we stayed married, and it got frustrating, I'm not gonna lie, but we also found ways to do a lot of fun stuff. And so I don't really have a question, just a comment that anybody in this room who has questions about super, stuff, and they can't call Zoe, they can call me, because I've actually talked a lot of girls through, well, you know what? Self-pleasure is not a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. And well, where do you start? I don't want to go buy it. Blah, if
Yeah.
anybody's like that, I'm so wide open about all that stuff. None of it bothers me
Beautiful.
anymore. But you
Yeah.
have to, like you were saying, Zoe, you have to get past what the world tells you need, or what the world tells you need to have, or what the world tells you shouldn't do, and just be you
Yeah.
and relax and figure it out. And
Yeah.
that's what we did.
Yeah.
But then he passed away.
Mm.
And now I have a new man of 2 years.
Mm.
And it's the hottest freaking sex I've ever had in my life at 57 years old.
Yeah.
So there's hope out there for all of you.
Yeah. Yes.
There's
That's
hope
all I
out there
wanted to
for
say.
all of us. That's really good to hear.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jolene. That's good to hear. I celebrate you and your resourcefulness
So I
and
have
hot sex at 57.
oh yeah, oh my God. Yeah. So I have a question for you, Zoe, and also I have one word for the group, the rabbit.
Oh,
It's the best vibrator on the market. And I got that tip from you, Zoe, in your book. It's
oh,
in there.
yeah.
It is. Okay, so, all right, guys.
Is it? Is it
Yeah.
in there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It on the audio, anyway, that's another topic, but it was the same topic, but I have my question. So Ken Bender is 66 years old. We're both 66. And we like it all. We like having sex. We've done it all everywhere. We don't care. But now at 66, he's having trouble maintaining an erection. And I'm in it to win it, right? So we go back to foreplay. We go back to, being intimate and talking. But, I can spend a lot of time working on getting him hard, and then he gets in me, and then he goes soft, and then we go back out. I go down on him, and then he's ready, then he comes back in. But there's a couple things happening for me personally. Number one, my jaw's starting to hurt. And number two, I like to win the race as good as anybody, but I'm running out of energy. I'm like, I've been here for a while now. I want to go do something else. What do you suggest?
Yeah, I want to just make sure that you are not, that you're not pursuing his erection as an achievement.
No,
and
I don't
that
either.
you make sure.
So for me, I don't care
Yeah, I mean,
because I don't need penile penetration to have an orgasm. And for him, I think it's more that he feels like he's, you know, um, I think he feels bad if he doesn't complete the test because he always has for the 44 years we've been married.
right, right. And so I think that the same medicine for everybody basically always is to have a conversation and to talk about it and to make it okay for to meet his body where it is and not try to get it to do something that it isn't doing organically in
Mhm.
the order or the way that it always has before. One of the things as our bodies age, and you know what, this goes for, we just have more flexibility and our bodies are more flexible and compensating when we're younger. But really, the difference between the sexual response at 17 is different than it is at 27, is different than it is at 40, and different than it is at 55. You have to meet your bodies where they are and work with what your body is needing in the moment. And sometimes that means the extra, the in and out blow job, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it means not sacrificing the the penetrative orgasm, you know, and and talking about that and talking about how that feels and talking about building him up as a
Mhm.
man in other ways, and so not sacrificing his feelings about that and his self-esteem, but making it okay for his body to not perform in the exact way that he's used to, that he's identified with.
I think that's really good feedback. So I started applying, you know, I love it when we have these moments together. It's so amazing and I love it so much. And I love it when we take breaks too. So, you know, let's take a break and we come back to this later. What do you think?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. Or, let me get the dildo out and you can do the thing with the dildo and then I'll take care of you after. Or if you don't want to, have an orgasm, that's okay too. Or, you know, yeah. But just talking through it is really, I think, what is most important. And like everything else in life, I'm a practicing Buddhist, so you're going to recognize that. But like radical acceptance,
mhm.
I radical acceptance of what is happening and what is unfolding in this moment. The where we get stuck is when we wish things are different than they are, and that's the source of suffering. That's the source of like, of the suffering that we bring in life and certainly in the bedroom. When we just accept that this is what it is and this is what I'm dealing with and I can survive this, whether it's a failed erection or or some catastrophe or health crisis or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I think
So
that's
Zoe,
Hmm.
sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Uh, so you mentioned get out the toy. Um, I don't know if anyone else that's here has like an old-fashioned man who understands the toy and knows that we use the toy and that we like the toy, but might have a little bit of a mental issue around the toy because he doesn't think he's man enough and I need a toy. What do you suggest? How do you,
I this is a rich topic. And
I'm
so
sure.
one of the things that I think is important to talk about is I have a lot of women who are only able to reach orgasm with a vibrator. And they want to be able to, they come to me because specifically they want to be able to reach orgasm without the vibrator with their partner. And so that's a whole process. It's totally possible, but with women who can only reach orgasm with a vibrator, all it is that you have trained your body to respond to a certain intensity of stimulation.
Right. No, and that's not my case.
Okay, good.
I just happen to like the enhanced situation sometimes.
Yes.
And he's from the old school of I'm
Right.
not a man if I can't please you kind of thing, but he does all the time.
So here's the conversation. This is no longer old school. You've brought me into your life to expand you and to grow and to open your mind and experience new heights of intimacy and pleasure and fun and sex. And this is not about you. This is just about, having fun and pleasure. And I love this. And I would hope that you would get over yourself and embrace this as another way of giving me pleasure. Clearly, you can give me pleasure without it because you do all the time. You are man enough, and I'm with you, which means you're man enough. And this is something I love. So,
Well, I like the word enhancement because that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not great without it, but once in a while it's fun to pull it out and
absolutely
add another level. So,
absolutely.
but I think there are some men that were probably raised the same way I was and I know mine's one of them, old fashioned blue collar truck driver. And he's like, you don't need that. If I can't do it,
right,
there's a problem.
And you know what? My husband says this all the time in a lot of different contexts. Like, our partners need to be tall enough to ride the ride. And we choose them because they have the potential. They're either already tall enough to ride the ride or they have the potential to be tall enough. And it's one of those things where you say, I love you and I hear your concern. And I want to make sure that you know that I am so happy to have you as a man and as my man. Like, you are so everything to me, and my enjoyment of a vibrator is not in any way a reflection of how I feel about you as my partner.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for answering our questions, Zoe. And I want to just say thank you for coming and talking with us today. I would love for you to come back in the future. I have to tell you, it's just really, this was a dream for me to have you join us. You're really a brilliant woman. You're a change maker. You're really helping to unfold this topic for people who are not necessarily walking the straight line, and also for women. And to me, that's really powerful. We need more women who are helping women with our understand our sexuality and our emotional connection with ourselves, because that's the seed, and so I really want to thank you for that. In closing, does anybody else have anything that they would like to ask Zoe? Hey, all right, that's awesome. Now, before I let you go, I also want to say, if there's any way that I can help to promote you and bring you forward for your book, Instagram, anything, you let me know. We can always cross-pollinate. I'm for it. And so I want to say thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much, Laura, for having me. And it's really nice to meet you guys. And yeah, thank you. And all the best to you and your partners. I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then you guys, I'm going to just kind of wrap it up for you so Zoe can move on. I think I paused